This is amazing. This is our first live. Okay. So I felt like it would be really great to have a conversation around the divine masculine and divine feminine energies. And I have been practicing channeling on a weekly basis for months and months with a good friend of mine, Jamie. So I invited him to join in on this conversation because it's so much easier to have a conversation with another person than it is to
True.
just talk to myself. And I don't actually really have set themes that I wanted to talk about, but I do have an example of something that came up for one of my members today, and we discussed it. It was amazing. So I felt like that would be a great starting point, and then maybe we come up with some questions to then ask the higher self, and potentially doing a live channeling session together. So I hope that sounds good. So I was talking to a member who just started my Circle of Light healing program. It's a channeled healing program where the intention is to develop a much stronger, consistent connection with your higher self and to have that connection facilitate healing and growth, both physically, emotionally, spiritually, energetically, and for your business too. So she started the process, and it was so fascinating because naturally it was clear that the masculine side was wanting to be healed and it was coming through. So she got a message around her dad, and I won't go into the specifics because that's confidential, but a message around her dad came up, and then it started to show up in her dreams as well. It's so spot on because it's the energy that will help her to take her business to a whole nother level because she's been preparing to experience a quantum leap in her business. And the divine masculine, rather than the shadow masculine or the wounded masculine, the divine masculine is coming through to really help with her confidence, with her focus, with her productivity. So it's been really amazing to see. So I'm
That's
wondering,
great.
yeah, yeah. I guess I'm wondering if you've noticed being in different states of your divine masculine, or when you feel like if it's not quite as present, or do you ever notice throughout your day or maybe your week where you're more in the divine masculine mode or less so? Like, I'm just curious because it's been fascinating to watch my members go through this.
That's a good question because I think that that certainly requires some energetic awareness of like what that feels like
Mhm,
to be in the divine masculine and the divine feminine. So definitely when I'm working with clients and there's something that comes through that requires a higher level of sensitivity
mhm.
or intuition or just really just feeling something out, I definitely feel the divine feminine come through,
Mm,
like
interesting.
when it's needed. And
Okay.
then when we need to take action,
Yeah,
like, okay, this needs to happen immediately. We need to clear this. We need to clear that. This, this needs to be shifted. That needs to be downloaded. So there's definitely, you know, now that you're saying it, I definitely feel that in sessions and when I'm working. It's
that's awesome.
absolutely like there is a difference. Yeah.
That's awesome. So you're able to switch modes. And we were just having this conversation. We had a group call with the members where in any given day you might be in one mode versus another. So you're finding that in a session. That's cool.
I think on a personal level, it is different where there are maybe days where I'm more creative or action
Mhm.
oriented versus, you know, in another mode. But definitely in the session, I feel a shift when that needs to happen. And there, I do feel a good balance between them, I think, for the most part. But that balance is the most noticeable when I'm working, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
That's
It's
cool.
like it has to be
Mhm.
that level of functionality.
That's cool. So I did learn that for channeling, both the divine masculine and feminine need to be developed. It's which makes sense because you want that you want to be able to direct the attention and the focus, so that's the divine masculine, and then also open up to receiving, which is the feminine. So that's
Right.
cool. In the group session today, we do this vibration shift call to start off Mondays, and one of the members kept she said that she kept waking up in the middle of the night, and this would happen a few times every week for a while. So immediately I felt like, well, that's probably an imbalance or a misallocation of when that masculine energy of being productive is being awakened. You know, you don't want to be awakened in the wee
Right.
hours of the morning. That would probably be better to be experienced during the day, but also with with the feminine energy, there's like a diffuse awareness versus the single focus of the masculine energy. So if there are lots of, and this is where a lot of women can tend to get overwhelmed, where we think of all of these details, and we're overwhelmed by the state of this, the physical space that we're in when we're seeing this and this, and this is calling all of our attention because of the diffuse awareness. But if you can get into, man or woman, get into that single focus, we're not seeing the mess. We're not seeing all those other details if it's not important to the task at hand. So it was a really great theme to jump off of for the group session today, because what we tapped into was asking our higher selves, when would it be most optimal for our divine masculine to be awakened and activated? And when would it be most optimal for the divine feminine energy to be activated? And it was cool. People were getting, they were getting in touch with their higher selves, and they were getting answers. And one of the members said, yeah, I got that. Okay. First thing in the morning, the divine feminine, afternoon, the masculine energy would be good. But then my higher self said the divine feminine should come in again at the evening, during the evening, but that's when
Hmm.
she has her kids, and it's a busy time of day. There's the meals being prepared, and um so then we broke it down to understanding that she can have both aspects going on, because if she's providing a result for preparing the food, that's masculine, right?
Hmm.
But she could do it in an embodied state where she's in a nurturing kind of an energy, and she's really present, and she might have that diffuse awareness. She's got the pot going here, chopping the vegetables here, minding the kids there, and oh, there's someone else. So she can be in the feminine while still getting some things done. It just gets done in a different kind of a way. But then if there's like a time sensitivity, like, oh, okay, well, after dinner we've got to go off to some activity, boom, like the divine feminine or masculine kicks in, and you tune out all the extra details that don't need to be there. So I think that was just a very practical, real life example of how we can toggle between the two energies. So it was really fun. It was really fun. I can feel myself when I tuned in the afternoon, which it's the afternoon right now, is a good time for me to be in the divine masculine, which is good because then, we can know that that's successful in producing a result for me, with that feeling of satisfaction, like, okay, we did do this YouTube live. All right, we did, we did get this done.
Right.
Um, so I'm seeing it play out in real time, which is fun to be aware of. So,
Yeah. And I think like the more you notice it, the more that you are empowered to utilize it.
mhm,
You're not, there's no confusion about like what energy is kind of flowing through, and you're like, okay, this is the mode that I'm in now. And I allow for that, I'm open to that, and then it just flows better, at
mhm,
least in my experience.
mhm. Do you find too, for me anyway, it's easier to recognize it in someone else sometimes before before you're able to recognize it in yourself. You're like, oh, I can see that someone is in their masculine mode, or oh, they're in their feminine. Somehow, like if it's and with that, it's sort of like it trains your mind to see and notice. So then you can turn that sight toward yourself and observe, oh, okay, oh, I'm really in my feminine, or oh, I'm really in the masculine, and it's serving me or not serving me right now.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. So are you helping your clients figure that out for themselves as far as like knowing when that happens and feeling it and then utilizing it when it comes through?
Well, that's what we were doing in the vibration shift call today as a group. Um, so how it works is I guide them. It's basically like a guided channeled session, which can be its own standalone experience, but then most people want to stick around for the conversation afterwards. So taking the theme that was channeled and then exploring it. Like, how are we practically using it in our lives? How are we practically implementing it in our business? Um, so there is that awareness for sure. In the circle of light healing process, it is really it's really great for when someone is hitting like a ceiling or a wall, and they're wanting to break through, and they've tried other things, and it usually, when there's some deeper healing work that will help to facilitate that breakthrough, it usually comes down to healing the masculine or the feminine energy,
Mm.
usually related to birth. um, and so when we or when someone goes through that healing with that aspect of themselves, it might not be at a point where it's more refined and they have that sensitivity and the awareness of, oh, well, I'm more in the divine masculine or divine feminine. It might be that the shadow side of the masculine or the shadow sides of the feminine starts to pop up and and express themselves, so that they go through that healing process with that aspect. And then once they do, it's like this integration happens. So then that experience of navigating does become more refined. But at first, it for some people it might be, and it was for me when I went through a significant round of healing both the masculine and feminine. It was like this excavation of like all of this stuff that had come to the surface because it was ready to finally be looked at and healed and shifted. And there was a period of some discomfort for sure, but then like a release, like major emotional, energetic releases, and then a feeling of like, oh, I'm feeling much more like myself. And it's like a better version of myself, because then certain things just didn't have the same charge or same stickiness as they used to. So then it gets fun. Then now more and more I'm noticing, oh, okay. Well, this mode is good for this activity or this task, or like for example, I was with when my daughter was a bit younger. I've been working from home for years, so my office was on the upper floor, and I'd come down to the kitchen, and my daughter would be there from after school, and I would still be in work mode, usually the masculine mode. And I would see all these tasks that needed to be completed in the kitchen, and I'd be like, kind of firing out orders, and she's like, ah. She just wanted fun, mom. She just wanted me to like not be in work mode, but she just wanted to have fun and, be nurtured and have me in a more loving, fun state. And so when I recognized that, we actually called it, oh, okay, I just need a bit of transition time to get out of work mode and, okay, I'm good now. I'm in fun mom mode. And just giving some language to that was really, really helpful. So she could see, and it helped her to not take it personally because it was not about her at all. It was just the state that I was in. But um eventually I clued into the need to switch and transition modes, which like that's a really small fun example, but there's so many examples of this in the rest of our lives and in business as well. So I see a lot of burnt out women where they're just totally stressed and overwhelmed with things. And it's sort of like the reorganization of when they tap into either the divine feminine or divine masculine modes is going to best serve them. And it's not about like canceling out one mode, um, or just only sticking with one mode. It's actually like with sleep. We were talking about sleep today, which is like the ultimate feminine. It's the yin versus the yang. The yang is the active masculine energy, the yin is the restful energy. So if we're deprived in the yin state and in the feminine state, we're not getting that restorative energy so that when we do wake up in the morning and the sun is shining, that we have like our full on, really primed masculine energy that we want to employ and, use and activate to get things done. So that's where I see a lot of burnout with all people, but especially women, professionals, practitioners and things. So have you seen this with your clients?
For sure. Yeah. And that leads generally from and you can tell me what you've seen too, but it generally I see it manifested as like a burnout of the adrenals and issues with, like symptoms of what some would call like ADHD, right? Where there's difficulty focusing or there's problems with like cognitive functions when problem solving. And so all of these things kind of manifest when there is that imbalance there. Um, so yeah, bringing people back into alignment, trying to figure out what the issues are that's causing the root of that, and kind of rebalancing that. And interestingly enough, like over the past couple weeks, there's been like this pattern of realigning the divine feminine for a lot of clients. So there's something in the collective consciousness that's becoming more prevalent and becoming more active and becoming more available to be healed, if that makes sense.
Mm,
Or
yeah.
we're just attracting it. I'm not sure yet, but something's going on.
That's awesome. So how are you seeing that? What are some examples?
As far as just the imbalance, yeah, like it'll just literally show up as divine feminine imbalance.
Mhm,
And then we have to figure out, like what we got to work on the physiological aspects of it, the
mhm,
energetic aspects of it, and
mhm,
the emotional aspects of it. Like there's often a lot of uh limiting beliefs,
mhm,
programming that
mhm.
blocks us because we feel like, okay, we must act this way, or I grew up in this circumstance and I have this
Yeah.
ancestral stuff. And it kind of says, okay, well, I have to maintain this very narrow lane for my behavior and how I express myself. And that really clogs or clouds one's ability to shift, like what you're talking about, like feeling comfortable in one or the other.
Oh, totally. What? what you just said is making me think of so with the feminine, the more shadow side of the feminine is that need to please. So they're not
Mhm.
kicked out of the herd, and the relationships and connections are really important for female survival, or especially back in the day. And so if someone is maybe feeling run down or overworked or just not optimal, it's easy for us to slip into the shadow expressions of either the divine, well, the shadow feminine or the shadow masculine. So that that totally makes sense. And maybe the person who's not able to focus and has that attention, like it's all scattered, but it's not serving them,
Right.
or they're in maybe a work situation where the focus is actually really important and they're just not able to get it together in that way. So that would indicate for me a deficiency in the masculine. So it'd
Hmm.
be good to bring them up. But if the adrenals are shot, that's both, right? That's where someone's like low on uh both sides. So
Yeah.
you want to raise them up. Hmm.
And serenity, with when you're working with somebody, how do you help them or guide them to actively shift from one to the other? Is there a process that you use or that you walk them through to gain awareness about that?
Question. I feel like it happens really intuitively and organically. Okay, here's an example. There was someone I was speaking with, and she happens to be getting very emotionally caught up with results
Hmm.
and letting the external results dictate how she was feeling. So when we talk about the emotions, that's connected with our feminine side in both men and both men and women. Um, and so I could see that, and it wasn't like a feeling of gratitude and appreciation and joy. It was fear and
Mm.
anxiety, like some of the some of those kinds of emotions that were wrapped up with the external circumstance. And so I basically um, asked her to get a, I might have used language kind of similar to this, but to basically get a grip. And something about that energetically flipped her into her being aware that she was allowing the emotions to run her. Like she was letting the emotions take her on this roller coaster ride instead of her operating from the inside out. She was letting the circumstance, the outside, dictate her inside experience of it. And so it was almost like she snapped out of this spell or this mode of operating. And she messaged me later that day and said, it was exactly what I needed to hear. So something like that was an example of just having her balance that out, right? So to have her invoke and activate a bit more of the masculine, to be like, okay, so if that is the result that she doesn't prefer, that's good feedback. What result does she prefer? And then what state does she have to be in? And what are the activities that she's got to get into to produce that result? So in a moment, she was able to shift into a more empowered state. Not to say that it's the masculine state that is an empowered state, not by any means, but in that moment, it was that the shadow side of the feminine was being overrun, or maybe it wasn't um, grounded and anchored in the frame and the structure of the masculine, which would then, like when we have a solid, strong masculine frame, it allows for the feminine to come out and play, to enjoy, to allow for the creativity and the flow. So we can see this in like the dynamic of conversations, of relating with another person, within ourselves, within our business. So we can see lots of examples of this, but it's really individual. Like it'll just, I find that it comes up and then we deal with it as it comes. Although, I mean, I have trainings on helping people identify what is in the feminine and what are examples of the masculine. So
Mhm.
just that awareness alone, I think, is a good step. But then, if it's deeply entrenched programming, it's it's important to be able to then work with that and do something from that point.
Right. And so you're able to notice, or you're able to see a difference when the people that you're working with just have an awareness of it.
Yeah.
Okay. That's great.
That, and then also a lot of times it's related to their blind spot. So
Hmm.
they don't see it. They're just blind to it. So then, when we discuss that on like a in a blind spot breakthrough call, or if they're already working with me in a coaching session. Yeah.
And you found that this has become kind of a very normal aspect of your coaching is to discuss this and bring awareness to it.
It has. I feel like it's been organically, it's been evolving just because of my own and my personal interest in the
Hmm.
masculine and feminine. And so I've been weaving it in throughout the trainings, throughout the sessions, and where it used to be kind of mysterious and kind of confusing before a bunch of years ago. Um, I feel like I've gained some clarity. So I wouldn't, I'm in it too. I'm in the process of discovering and shifting things within myself too. So, um, I'm doing the work as we speak. But if I'm a few steps ahead, or if I know something that can help because it's helped me, I'm really happy to pass that on and share that with others. So especially when it comes to the dynamic of the masculine and feminine, because it runs so deep. It goes to survival instincts, it goes to, what our highest potential expression could be. So it's I don't think we're going to cover it all today, but we're starting the conversation. Yeah. What about you?
It comes up, I think, when it needs to come up, like similar. It hasn't, it's certainly not like incredibly regular, but very recently it has come up more often where there is like whatever is blocking this person from, let's say, success at work or dealing with family member or dealing with something that's troubling them, like some blockage or some trigger. Often they're getting triggered by something. And then it will come up, okay, well, there's an imbalance with divine masculine or there's an imbalance with divine feminine. So it's kind of a very high level issue. And it's just a tool to be like, okay, so this is kind of, it's almost like a symptom. So this is a symptom of these five or six different things that we need to kind of dig deeper into. And we kind of jump down that rabbit hole and we find out what it is. It could be childhood trauma, it could be a past life thing, it could be genetic, whatever it is, toxins, that's blocking it. But I think that you make a really good point that bringing the awareness to that is important. So while we're energetically rebalancing that, I may not be bringing enough awareness to the client and be like, okay, well, now that it's rebalanced, here's what you can do with this superpower or this ability or, whatever. So that's really a really interesting thing for me to think about is how do I talk to my clients about that? Once we energetically resolve it, now what do they go forth and do with it? Right?
I feel like it's a process
Hmm.
because it can feel very raw while someone's shifting their well, when something's coming up and out, right, through the surface, it can feel really raw and visceral. So it may or may not be the time, like maybe just allowing them to have that experience and then revisiting it to then help them navigate that, because they
Mhm.
may or may not be able to even receive it if it's so intense or raw at that moment. But maybe someone, someone else could really be receptive and open and ready to process it. It's been an interesting journey to work with people with these themes, with these energies, because of how powerful they are. And lots of people, practitioners, will look at it from a hormonal perspective. Um, I'm more a fan of like relying less on taking things exogenously, but to really shift things at the mindset or the behavior level, working with the energies, because then the physiology catches up. It does follow suit. So that's my preference. But yeah, there's so much. I think this is great, just having the conversation, right? So it's not, it doesn't have to be this majorly polarized topic, a polarizing topic of like only the masculine, or time for the rise of only the feminine. And it's really like we want both to be supportive of each other within
Right.
ourselves, and then in relationship with other people, and then in our society, in our world ultimately. So
Well, that's a great point. And I was thinking that we might need to talk about that because there is this kind of perception on some level culturally that, okay, divine feminine is for people who identify as a woman, and divine masculine is for people who identify as a man, and on a very high level, right? So how do we help people understand that we both, everybody has both, and then how do we allow space for someone who's considered masculine to utilize the divine feminine and vice versa? Like what's a good way to explain that to people who may not be familiar with it?
oh, that's a great place. We could have started there, but we're here now.
We made it
So
to wherever we need
my
to go.
my belief and understanding is that every person, regardless of whether you're a man or a woman, we all have the divine feminine and divine masculine potentials within ourselves. The relative balance of, the hormonal physiological makeup, that's generally going to be that a woman is going to be healthier when more of the female hormones like estrogen are higher relative to the male hormones, testosterone, and then the vice versa for someone born as a man. Generally, their stress reducing hormone is going to be testosterone, and relative to estrogen, which is also needed for their healthy physiology, but to a lesser degree, that kind of relative balance is important. Um, Not speaking hormonally, but I see everything symbolically too. So how does that play out energetically? And then within each individual, you're you're probably going to have, like, I have a lot of divine masculine that gets frustrated if it's not expressed. So if I've gone through a stretch of time when I don't feel like I've been productive, my divine masculine gets frustrated and wants to um, have that part activated. But it's also paired with my divine feminine of the creativity. So I usually have like a creative project or an idea, something I want to express, and then it's the divine masculine who I can like get to work. Like I'll employ the divine masculine. Okay, can we set this up? Can we make these meetings happen? Can we do this recording? And then it's like this dance. So the divine feminine has the creative idea, the divine masculine helps to set up the frame and structure around it to help get it done. Then it goes into the divine feminine again to receive and be open to the opportunities and possibilities that expanded energy. And then, it's this dance back and forth between the two. So that's how I'm understanding it currently. Yeah. What about you? How would you explain it or explore it?
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, so I think when we're talking with clients and with different people about it, the understanding that, I use the yin and the yang for example, right? Like this, and in Chinese medicine, right? That is means masculine and feminine energy. And so you can't have one without the other. They complement each other. And there's a piece of each in the other. And so when you are when you have the balance that you need, that you're going to be the most highest level of performance, where you'll be able to access your gifts, your abilities to a greater degree when you are in balance. And so that's really how I generally talk about it. Um, Again, I don't really coach people, so I'm not really walking them through like what to do necessarily, sometimes with diet, but as far as like life coaching, not really a thing that I do. But as far as making sure that energetically that they're at the right balance for them, so that allows them, generally they'll see a big opening. They'll see like a heart opening, or they'll see some type of shift like you were saying. And I'm generally not there walking them through that shift, but we're allowing that shift to happen. And so them understanding like, look, if you're not in balance, other things will become imbalanced. And when you are balanced rather, then you can move forward with a greater speed, a greater pace, and things will be easier because you'll have access to those tools that you need to use, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I love that. Well, I have been loving this conversation because I feel like we're on the same page with so much of this, and some of the stuff we haven't even talked about yet together. So it's kind of fun for me to hear your perspective and then to share mine. So what maybe what we could do is transition into see what the higher self has to say around this theme. But I think I want to start like to log in again and do a fresh live stream if that
Sure.
works for you. So we can
Yeah.
like log out and then tune back um in a few minutes.
Okay.
That'll be awesome. All right. Thanks so much for this conversation. And
All right.
if you're watching this and if you like it, resonate, what can you do? You can share a comment, you can subscribe. We'd love to hear. And if you have any ideas yourself around masculine, feminine energies, or have any questions, anything that you want us to explore, feel free to type it into the comments and we will talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, everybody.